Hi and welcome to another video, and in this video we are going to talk about robotic assistive technologies that aid manipulation. Okay, so here we have assistive technologies that are still helping in manipulation, so the activity is still manipulation, but we are talking about robotic technologies and how they can be useful. So let's take a look. Again, remember that we are using the HAT model to discuss assistive technologies. Okay, and because the activity, the human aspects, and the context is similar to the previous cases, I'm not really going to discuss it. We are just talking about robotic assistive technologies. Now, when we think about assistive robots, there are a few things that we need to think about. So the first thing is the configuration. And what we mean by configuration is, where is the robot located? So is it fixed to a table? Or is it a mobile robot, which is, for example, attached to a wheelchair? Or is it a robot that is fixed to the human being and can be essentially carried around? So that would be the first thing that you want to know about an assistive robot. The second thing that you want to think about a robot is, how many degrees of freedom does the robot have? So degrees of freedom is um, the various kinds of independent things, excuse me, that a robot can do, independent movements that a robot can do. So for example, this vehicle here can go forward, it can go left and right, those are 2 degrees of freedom, and then it can turn right and turn left. So it's got like 4 degrees of freedom. How this robot, on the other hand, has many more degrees of freedom, right? It can rotate around this joint, it can rotate around this joint, it can rotate around this joint here, and then this can move, let's say, open and close, and so on and so forth. So those are so you need to know, when you're looking at assistive robots, how many degrees of freedom do we have. Now, the more degrees of freedom a robot has, the more difficult it is to control the robot, right? Because the more signals you have to give to control it. But at the same time, the robot is much more versatile. It can do many more different tasks, hopefully, if it has more degrees of freedom. We also need to think about autonomy of assistive robots, right? So you can have robots which are basically human powered, right, and are completely under the control of humans. So on the one hand, you could have robots where the computer offers no assistance and the human does it all. And basically the robot acts as an either as an amplifier or as a reaching device, right? So for example, some of these devices that we were talking about, let's say just using a stick to manipulate something that is far away from you, can be thought of as a robot which is completely under the control of the human being, right? The computer does not even generate extra force. But on the other hand, you could have robots. On the other extreme, you could have a robot where the computer decides everything and you don't do anything, right? The computer is completely autonomous. And then there are various levels of gradation of autonomy, from the human end to the computer end. And you can have more and more and more of computer control and less of human control. And there are advantages and disadvantages to both, right? So in case where the computer does not offer any help, it's basically the person has to do everything. He has to use his force, he has to make decisions, he has to do the things, and that's perfectly fine for some people. But some people may have disabilities which are so big that that doesn't really help, right? And maybe more autonomy to the computer may be helpful. There may be cases where your computer uh, can make decisions that human beings can't make, either because of cognitive disabilities or because of sensory disabilities. Because of some reason, the human beings are not able to make the decision, and the computer makes the decision, right? So it's not like one is good and the other is bad, but it's just who is using it and for what purpose. And you have various kinds of things. Various kinds of you can have various things can be good in various different situations, right? Then of course you have safety requirements. Now the problem with robots is sometimes the things that they do can hurt somebody, uh, and we need to make sure that it's not hurting the person that it is trying to assist, and the people around as well. So there have been various applications of robots. One application of robots is as personal assistants. So for example, let's say there's a person like me who's sitting here, and let's say I want to pick up some things from a bookshelf which is there. I could have a robot where I say, well, pick me that particular book, and the robot takes it, gives it to me, and I can then use it, right? You could have a little bit more detailed things. So for example, here the robot is offering this person a drink to have. A robot may turn the pages of a book for me, and things of that kind. So you can have personal assistants, robots as personal assistants, and they can be of a great help to people who have disabilities. You could also have robotic workstations, right, which are very similar to personal assistants, but in this case, the robots are fixed to a workstation and they're optimized for to do certain functions, right? And there have been some research done where these have been compared with a human personal assistant at a workstation, and the robots perform well in certain things, right? They can do things much more quickly and they can use more force and do more difficult stuff. They don't tire, and those kinds of things are good about robots. But then the problem with robots is that you have to tell them what they need to do, right? They are not like human beings. So if I say, for example, to a person, hey, pick me Microelectronic Circuits by Cedra Smith, a person would be able to read through the shelf and find the book and give it to me, while a robot huh, may not be able to do that, right? Perhaps I'll have to give the robot the exact location of what I want, or maybe it makes mistakes when it's trying to detect, or you need a very very high technology robot to actually read the title of the book and recognize it and know that is the book that I want, and things of that kind. Okay. One big application of robots is to enable play in kids with sensory motor disabilities. Now, play is absolutely essential for kids because as children touch various things, as they manipulate their environment, they really learn how the world functions, right? Uh, just think about it. We intuitively know that when we look at a soft thing, that it is soft and nice and smooth to touch, while there is another hard and sharp thing that we shouldn't touch. How do we know that? We know that because we have learned that by experience, right? We have touched it over a period of time and we know how to manipulate these things. Play is absolutely important for children, and robots can really, really help in enabling play for children who have severe problems with, let's say, moving around and things of that kind, right? So, let me give you an example. Um, Again, when I was doing some research a long time back, in when I was doing my PhD, we had these children come into the clinic, these twin boys who were born with no hands and no feet, no legs, no arms, no legs. Okay, and basically these boys were just lying down. They were not able to move around, and the only way they would move around is by rolling over and going here and there. And when the clinicians saw those children, one of the first things they said is, well, these kids need to play. They need to be able to touch things. They need to be able to move around a little better, maybe sit straight. Okay, so the one of the first things that we were trying to design was a kind of a wheelchair for them, but not really a wheelchair which is very high, but a wheelchair that's right on the ground where they can sit upright and they can move around, and then they can kind of touch various things that come to them through some, let's say, reachers or something of that kind. so that they can manipulate things and kind of get a feel for the world that is around them, right? So that was a very very simple robot, right? You could have made it more high technology if you wanted and put so that it could have helped, but that was a very simple uh, what is a robotic wheelchair, you can say, or a robotic car that would enable the children to move forward and backwards and to do the stuff. So those are some of the ways in which robots can be used to enhance manipulation around.